Say John the Philosopher here. It's no secret that the news media and much of the entertainment industry are trash. Full-on dumpster fire of muck and filth kind of trash. And it's degrading society. I know it. You know it. I think even they know it deep down. So the only question is, what are you willing to do about it? This is the fourth video in a series about what I think it will take to truly fight and win the current culture war. For the previous video or a link to the entire playlist, check down in the description below. Actual wars are rarely won by the complete annihilation of the opposing forces, but instead through the conquest of what's called key nodes and infrastructure. Things like bridges, power plants, and ports. Culture wars are similar, with the key nodes in this case being education and academia, which I talked about in the last video, and news and entertainment, which is our subject today. As I mentioned several times before, things tend to work like so. The religion or worldview of individuals feeds into the larger culture, informing those institutions about society's shared values, which is finally expressed in our governance through politics. Thus, the religion, culture, and politics construction I reference in every video. When religion is weak, however, and worldviews are left unmoored from clear foundational truths, you get a strange feedback loop effect where the political and cultural forces influence the way people think about a given subject. It changes individual worldviews, which further degrades culture, and it's eventually codified in politics, becoming a new status quo. Then the cycle repeats in a downward spiral towards national destruction. Chattel slavery is a good historical example of this. The church's unwillingness to tackle the issue head-on led to cultural malaise on the subject. The natural human tendencies towards tribalism and greed became law, and law in turn continued to shape culture towards those ends. Eventually, it corrupted the church, giving rise to an enduring white supremacist heresy that has tainted the reputation of Christianity to this day. The cultural craziness is pretty varied today, but we're in a similar place as we were then, with competing and incompatible visions for what the nation should be and where it should go in the future playing out on TV screens and in earbuds. At this point, I shouldn't have to provide any examples of narrative-heavy newspaper headlines or TV news anchors straight up lying about people. And I'm definitely not going to put any examples of the filth coming out of Hollywood in this video. I'd rather not have it age restricted, thank you very much. But you get it. You've been sufficiently exposed to it to understand, at least on some level, the extent of the problem. Now, when it comes to a solution, that's where things can get tricky. News media in particular is a more complicated subject than you might think. While confidence in the news is at an all-time low, and for good reason, a large portion of the country still seems to be working under the old paradigm of objective journalism, that any outlet with news in the name are all
just the facts, man.
But we certainly know that that isn't the case. It's been decades now since the line between straight news and editorial commentary has been blurred beyond all recognition. And that's not even including the increasingly clear notion that even during its heyday, journalists both knowingly and unknowingly manipulated the information they divulged to the public according to whatever narrative they sought to maintain. Muddling things even further has been the mixing of news with entertainment programs like The Daily Show, which became the sole source of news for a large portion of young people for a while there. A trend not likely to have changed of late with the John Olivers and Trevor Noahs out there. Given all that, it's hard to make the case that we should attempt some sort of reset back to the probably non-existent good old days of journalistic objectivity. And even if we did decide to try and retake news by pushing conservatives into journalism schools around the country, that's a long-term project. What will we do in the meantime as the vast majority of journalists act as attack dogs for leftist politics? Sure, we can always do our part to encourage people to look beyond headlines, question the presuppositions behind stories, and be skeptical of anonymously sourced articles. And with the rise of specifically conservative outlets like OAN, Newsmax, and others, we can draw on more information to help us evaluate and determine what's true and what's propaganda. But that's a lot of work that most people simply won't do. So what's the best way to tackle our problem with the news? Let me know in the comments, because I'm honestly not sure about that one. When it comes to entertainment, however, things are much clearer and align very well with the type of change we're looking to do in education, like creating our own spaces in the short term and conducting a steady infiltration of the large mainstream institutions in the long term. The Christian or Christian-adjacent subgenres in particular have been taking off for years now, with groups like VidAngel and PureFlix producing new content pretty regularly. Now, while this has the benefit of providing at least a somewhat viable alternative for those of us tired of the slanderous disrespect of our beliefs in film, it does have its flaws. A lot of them. The biggest talents, whether in front of or behind the camera, tend to go where the money is, leaving the small independent production houses with, I hate to say, underdeveloped staff. The quality of the product suffers, and so does its general appeal beyond the true believers. That isn't to say we can't get good content. I really enjoyed Risen, the story of a Roman soldier tasked with tracking down the missing body of Jesus. And The Chosen, an ongoing series about Christ's disciples, is simply incredible, and I highly recommend it. There will be links in the description for a few things, actually. But these tend to be the exceptions that prove the rule. Music seems to be a pretty successful area where the Christian alternative is expanding its footprint as well, often showcasing high-quality works. A Christian radio group here in St. Louis started a pop and hip-hop station a few years ago, and it's already grown to cover well beyond the metro area, and even recently picked up a simulcast station in Chicago, of all places. Christian hip-hop itself is a growing genre under the power of crossover talents like Lecrae, 21 Pilots, and NF. Again, however, it's not without its problems. A number of prolific and well-known Christian music artists have publicly walked away from the church or begun using the progressive rhetoric reminiscent of those on their way out the door. It's only a handful, but it's definitely enough to begin forming a very disturbing trend. Regardless of the industry, on the creator side, we need the labels, studios, publishers, and what have you to ensure that everyone's talents and abilities are pushed to their ultimate limits and that the cream of that talent really does rise to the top. Undeniable quality tends to gain mainstream success and is harder to ignore by industry gatekeepers. That's our way in to the young minds that consume it. They also need to provide constant and serious mentorship and accountability in regards to the faith of the performers. The often young, impressionable people involved are no less theologically fragile than anyone else and shouldn't be expected to face the social pressures of the world of the arts on their own. What you can do is put your money where your mouth is and support these projects, particularly the high-quality ones. Buy the DVDs or albums or books, share the trailers and music videos, talk about your favorite creators on Twitter, and make recommendations on Amazon. Your digital footprint may be small, but if we run together, it might as well be a stampede. These projects need all the good word of mouth they can get. They don't have the massive media dollars of the big guys, and you know traditional entertainment journalism isn't going to give them a fair shake, even if they do catch wind of them. So it's up to us to spread the word. That support can eventually transform the fledgling upstart creators into powerful entities with far-reaching influence. That goes for everything, by the way, even video games, comics, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere you can consume media. It's all part of the same game. Keep in mind that the establishment and successful cultivation of alternative entertainment is not the goal. There's a large portion of the population who have not even encountered other ideas besides those coming from the left. They've never heard a defense of conservative principles, and a balkanized entertainment space isn't going to solve that problem. So the conservative and Christian alternative should exist to serve two purposes. First, as a refuge, of course, and more importantly, as a farm league to develop the people and skills necessary to retake our lost territory in the mainstream. We need some degree of control of those key nodes and infrastructure of culture in order to provide a counterpoint to the left's persistent narrative. In addition to supporting the things we like, we need to say something about the things we don't, and not just to each other, but to the studios, production companies, and streaming services, etc. The conservative tendency to simply lodge our silent disapproval hasn't been working for us, and even when we do say something, like on social media, it's largely ineffective. We're either gathering in our little conservative conclaves complaining to each other, or we're having pointless online fights with leftist nobodies. If you had a problem at a restaurant and actually wanted to get things to change, would you talk to the manager or another diner who thinks that everything is just fine the way it is? And also that you're a Nazi. So tell it to the studio bosses. Tell their advertisers that you don't appreciate the products they're supporting. But don't be a jerk about it. We don't need to tell Sony Pictures that they're ruining all of society, or call Hellfire down on Nabisco for advertising on a TV show called Lucifer. Companies spend tens of millions of dollars a year to find out what their customers are thinking, so they can adjust their practices accordingly. Unsolicited feedback is worth twice as much. We're at least half the population. We should be able to move the needle. For too long, conservatives have been content to fight in the arena of ideas exclusively in the realm of politics. But if we were smart, we'd take 3/4 of the money we currently donate to think tanks and the like and put it all into entertainment. Politics is downstream of culture, and we're rapidly nearing the tipping point where the culture is so turned against conservatism that it ceases to be a significant governing philosophy in America. That might sound a bit alarmist to you, but consider where we were just 10 or even 5 years ago. Get your armor on and get into this fight. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Tell me what you think of this video. What else do you think we can do to win back mainstream entertainment? What are your favorite Christian and or conservative alternatives? Discuss in the comments. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on religion, culture, and politics. That's all for today. Goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you in another video.